right, we are on.
Welcome everybody. Today is Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. We are here for rezoning case ZON-25-07. Michelle, can you please call roll?
Trustee Faust?
Here.
Trustee Knoll? Here. And Trustee Ringel?
Here.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, just to give a quick agenda of the meeting, how this will go, Robin will read our staff report, then the applicant will give a presentation, then we will ask any questions of the applicant that we have, and then you guys as participants in the meeting come and direct questions to us. We will compile all the questions, and it could be questions or comments, but we will compile the questions, we will direct them to the applicant, and then he will respond to those questions, and then a decision time is at the end. So that's the order of agenda. Robin, can you give us a staff report, please?
Thank you, Trustee Faust. So we are here for rezoning case ZON-25-07. The applicant is a real property design and development. Property is located at 6980 South Old State Road. There are two parcels in question. Total acreage is 8.34 acres plus or minus. Current zoning is farm residential or FR1. The rezone request is to rezone that acreage to a single family planned residential district for 19 single family residential homes. So the existing house on the property would remain. The other 18 homes would be new construction. That would bring the total district to 19 homes. The initial development plan that was proposed by the applicant did call for 24 total homes, so that number has decreased since then. The applicant requested to table the application in October of last year, and then a second zoning commission hearing was held in March 2026. Following the second zoning commission meeting in March, a new development plan was submitted by the applicant, so there has been a change since the previous hearing. In terms of the surrounding area, to the north is FR1 properties, single family usage. To the south is also FR1, as well as single family planned residential district in Summerfield Village. To the east is South Old State Road, and to the west is also SFPRD, HOA open space and more. See the aerial photograph there with the two parcels highlighted in yellow. In terms of the 2018 comprehensive plan, parcels in question are located in sub-area 10. Recommendation 10-1 states continue large lots on 1 acre or more fronting on Orange, Lewis Center, and South Old State Roads, while recommendation 10-3 reads infill remaining lands with planned developments at 2 units per acre if served by centralized sanitaries. On the following page, you can see the staff report, the site plan proposed by the applicant. We will have a larger version that we can put on the screen later, but it is there for reference. Again, for density and unit count, the proposal is for 19 total homes. 18 of those would be new construction. That brings the gross density of the project to 2.28 units per acre. That does exceed the maximum of 2 units per acre required by the SFPRD code, which does require a divergence from that section code. In terms of open space, it would comply with the standards of the district. Open space listed for the project is 22%. The minimum in SFPRD is 20%. Minimum floor area, the development text specifies that the minimum building square footage would be 1,800 square feet. The SFPRD minimum is 1,000, so that does comply with that requirement. Mobile homes are not permitted. In terms of landscaping, planting list includes Norway spruce, on-place maple, and flowering dogwood trees to be planted throughout the district for street trees. By street trees, we mean trees outside the right-of-way, as well as screening. The applicant has added some tree preservation zones along the southeast corner of the site, as well as the northern property line. In terms of amenities, an entry feature is proposed near the entrance to South Old State Road with some signage and associated landscaping there. And a neighborhood park with top lot and benches is proposed for Reserve C at the northwest corner of the development. In terms of development standards, Divergences are requested for the minimum lot depth. The development text proposes lot depth of 120 feet. The SFPRD standard is 135 feet. So that is a divergence of 15 feet total. The lot width is proposed to be 75 feet. That does comply with the SFPRD standard of 75 feet. Divergences are also requested for the reduced rear yard setbacks. We do note that the front and side yard setbacks comply with the SFPRD standards. So the front setback would be 30 feet, which complies. The side setback would be 12.5 feet each, so that's 25 feet total between the buildings. That does comply with SFPRD regulations. The rear setback is the one that triggers that diversion. It's proposed to be at 30 feet instead of 35 feet. So again, the three total divergences. First one is for overall gross density for 2.28 units per acre rather than 2. The second for lot depth from 135 feet to 120 feet. And then the third for the rear yard setback to be 30 feet instead of 35 feet. There's two additional staff comments. The Orange Township Trustees approved the zoning resolution update, which took effect March 5th of this year. However, because this request is for the SFPRD zone, because the application was submitted before the zoning change, those are the standards that technically apply to this application. We do have a comparison chart that the applicant provided later on in the staff report, which compares the old code, the new code, and the proposed standards in this district. The Orange Township Operations Department during tech review recommended that no parking signs be installed around the cul-de-sac. In terms of code comparison, again, this was provided by the applicant on the site plans, but you can see there the standard code section on the left-hand side, the SFPRD code, and the new code and the proposed development standards of this district on the right. In general, they more or less line up with the neighborhood zone, which is the new straight district in the new zoning code, with the exception of the lot depth. The neighborhood zone does have a maximum density of 2.5 gross units per acre compared to the 2 of the SFPRD zone. In terms of review from other agencies, the conceptual site layout was reviewed and approved by the Orange Township Fire Department as of yesterday. The Delaware County Regional Planning Department, in terms of the Regional Planning Commission, voted to recommend denial of the rezoning request at their meeting on February 26th of this year. RPC staff noted in their recommendation to the full Regional Planning Commission that denial was recommended based on the proposed density being higher than recommended in the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of the single-family use of a lower density. Should the zoning commission and trustees choose to approve the project, staff has no significant concerns with the dimensional increases. Those were the words of regional planning staff. Again, this recommendation to full RPC. The Orange Township Zoning Commission also recommended denial of the rezoning request with a 3-2 vote. They're meeting on March 10th, 2026. And again, just staff noting that the development plan has changed since those votes. That's all I have at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Do you have any questions for Robin? Yeah. Okay. All right, John, do you want to give us your spiel?
Good evening, trustees. John Wicks, Real Property Design and Development. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Can you give us your address, please?
2973 East Orange Road. I'm pleased to present here this updated plan. As Robin pointed out, it's a different plan than what the zoning commission saw. In that hearing, there was a lot of discussion about this zoning application as and kind of versus the new zoning code that had been adopted. We kind of got caught in the middle. To give you a little context or background, I started this process in September of last year before there was any real idea when the new code would be approved. So I was invited to go ahead and go under the SFPRD, which I was happy to do. My initial submittal was based on the then current draft of the zoning code, which notably allowed for 3 units in the acre and 55-foot wide lots. So obviously it wasn't approved, but that's kind of where my first application came from. It resulted in doing so, it resulted in several divergences being requested for the SFPRD code. At my first hearing in October, we tabled it because there was a lot of consternation over that. And I said I wanted some time to revise the plan to bring it more in compliance with the new zoning code, the new draft of the new zoning code, which specifically the items of 2.5 units to the acre and 70-foot wide lots versus 60 feet, which is what I had proposed originally. So that's what I submitted to zoning commission in February. However, at that hearing, Robin pointed out that we have to stick to the SFPRD rules because that's the code I was submitted under. So that's why additional variances are still being asked for here. At the zoning commission hearing, they were uncomfortable with the number of divergences, and they voted for denial 3-2. And it's important to note that regional planning's recommendation, I just want to reiterate what Robin said, it was denial based solely on the fact that the density I was requesting was greater than the comprehensive land use plan. Comprehensive land use plan suggests 2 units to the acre. I was at that time requesting 2.5. But it's important to mention that the new zoning code doesn't comply with the comprehensive land use plan either. So if that's permitting 2.5 units to the acre, if they still, at regional planning, use that as their criteria for denial, they're going to deny every application. So in any case, following that hearing, I made further changes, most notably including the following. I removed the divergence for the lot width. So I brought my lot width up to 75 feet, even though 70 feet is permissible in the neighborhood zone. I removed the divergence completely regarding reduced side yard setbacks. I had asked for 10 feet versus 12.5, and the plan has 12.5. I reduced the number of lots from 21 to 19, and thus the density from 2.5 to 2.28 units to the acre. And I increased the open space from 20.8% to 22%. On the front page of the plan, there's an error. It calls the open space 20.8 on there. That's a bad number, but it's in the zoning text it says it's 22. What I didn't change on the new plan was I didn't change the buffering that I had provided to the south after meeting with residents there. I had agreed to put in some mounting and some buffering, and also on the north side of the property. I also didn't change the lot depths, and the reason I didn't change the lot depths is because the parcel itself is restricted. It's only 302 feet wide, and in order to have lots on both sides of the road for an efficient layout, what we're left over with is 122 feet on one side and 120 feet on the other side. It's notable also that those depths are the same as or even larger than some of the lot depths on the neighboring Summerfield Village. In fact, the one property line on the cul-de-sac to the south that's most adjacent to this lot is 115 feet, so we're greater than that. And their standard lot size to the west of this project is 60 by 120, so we're greater than those lot sizes. So for that reason, I'd argue that we're not out of character for the developments in this area. And I'd like to broach the subject of density, which we've discussed ad nauseum here, getting a 4-letter word, whether it's got that number lettered or not. But while I'm still seeking a variance divergence, I did reduce it from 2.5 to 2.28 by dropping 2 lots. There's a history in this township of granting additional density on a case-by-case basis when the development proposes amenities beyond the minimum requirements. The comp plan actually addresses that in Appendix B4. It discusses the concepts of, discussed in future drafts, it should discuss the concepts of density bonuses. Density bonuses have also been discussed by this board in recent hearings, such as on August 7th of last year, it was discussed adding features such as top lots, community gathering spaces, tree preservation zones, landscape buffers, which are not required in the standard zoning. By adding those would be candidates for such bonuses. And in fact, this plan has all 4 of those features. So the density divergence only results in an additional 2 lots, which helps the viability of the project. Because as I explained before, the cost of this development is going to be the same whether it's 25 lots or 22 lots or 17 lots. All that does is really just results in more expensive lots and fewer people can afford. So in summary, the current plan reflects changes based on previous hearings, community feedback and output, and concessions were made to address those concerns. And what we're seeking to build is a classy new subdivision the township can be proud of, with high quality standards and a new product that fits in among the other quality homes. So I appreciate your consideration and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, do you guys have any questions?
I know we've received some questions from residents leading up to the hearing. I don't know if we want to wait until we've actually heard from residents to ask some of those questions, but.
I have a few questions. Do you have questions? Do you know what the size is? The green space, it's 22%, is that correct?
22%.
22. So like the stormwater retention pond, would that be accessible by the residents that live there? Is that usable open space?
That open space is usable, yeah. Yeah, we can create it. I mean, generally, you like to have a no fishing sign out there for, just for safety, but it would be public space.
And the small reserve that's at the northern, there's two, a reserve and then the top lot, the reserve area on the east side, would that be usable for the residents as open space?
On the east side, next to lot one?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, that'll all be open space. Public open space.
And do you know what is the density, what is the size of the property if you excluded the existing lot 19 from this plan? Do you know what the acreage would be on the site? Do you know how large that acreage is?
I haven't done that, no.
Robin, is it correct that it's
It looks like it's 23,114 square feet. Is that lot? It's what's showing on sheet 2.
is that an acre?
I can try to math it.
Sorry, what is it?
It's legal for them to include an existing home in the development, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, we would seek a new address for that house.
I'm sorry, what?
We would seek a new address for that house, and it would be built up to the standards that.
It's about half.
What's happening? Okay.
0.53.
Okay, and so currently the stormwater retention pond and is this all one parcel?
It's 2 parcels.
It's two, including the existing home, okay. And was there any, let's see here, was there any issue with, there's only one egress to this property, is there any issue with the Delaware County engineer on that? Because they usually require 2.
They require 2 if there are 2 available. In this case, there was no stub street put in from the surrounding developments, which is typically a requirement of the county engineer, but they didn't do that in this case.
So did they approve that?
They approved.
They haven't approved it in writing, it's been approved?
Yeah, it's in your bag.
Do it just one egress?
Yes, ma'am.
And they had no concerns about, what is it, like 270 trips per day that will be generated by this development?
No turn lane would be required based on the traffic analysis, that's correct. And there's an ongoing plan for widening of Old State, I think in 2027, 28 to 5 lanes in this area, so there'll be a turn lane built into that.
Do you have any concern with people coming in and out of the development and not being able to easily get in and out, because that is a very fast road and there's curves and things on it?
There are times during the day where it's difficult to get in and out of there, I agree with that, but the site distance is there, so if everybody's driving safely, then it shouldn't have the issues, it just might take them to get in and out.
Yeah, it seems a little bit difficult. Okay, so in the land use plan, so currently, is there sanitary sewer to the existing house?
No,
Is
it's
that
also.
septic system, and is it going to be converted to the
Yes.
sanitary?
Yes.
Do you have a question?
Okay.
To Okay, go ahead, I have a few more.
Can you speak to drainage, John? So, I mean, I understand that when you're comparing the sizes of your proposed development to the existing summer field, it feels similar. However, there's obviously a farm residential lot directly to the north. There's also a farm residential lot in the southeast portion of this, so that feels very different than the existing around there. So we've had some questions from the residents about drainage. Specifically, when I looked at, I think your utility sheet, which I want to say is sheet 2, no, sheet 1? Sheet 2, thank you. How the houses 17, 18, and 19, and where would those drain? Because I see I think it's a storm drain. Yeah, storm sewer, kind of between lot 16 and 17, but it's houses 18 and then the existing home, which is 19. Where would those drain?
So there'll be a swale in the back of the backyard there. There's enough fall that we didn't need to add another storm structure between 18 and 19. There'll be a swale that would capture the backs of those properties and direct them into that storm catch basin between 16 and 17.
Okay, so for those of us who are not engineers or no longer practicing engineers, remind me what a swale is.
Just a small V-shaped ditch.
Okay. So it would not direct the water to the washer or
No,
not the washer.
no, we'll capture all of our water within the site, pipe it to the pond, and then the pond will discharge out to the culvert under Old State that the county directed me to.
So behind houses 18 and 19, that swale would direct the water to the road and then it would go into the catch basin. Is that saying it correctly?
I'm sorry, behind 17 and 18?
Yeah, like would it be, the water, in my curve, there are holes that water comes out of from my house
Oh, roof drains will all come out on the curb.
onto the curb.
Yeah.
Okay. There was, when I look at sheet 3, there are a lot of trees added behind houses 9 through 14, and then behind house like 1 and 2, and then that reserve B. So basically it's protecting the existing subdivision more so from the new subdivision, but there's nothing in here buffering wise besides the tree preservation zone to the farm residential lots.
Well, it's a challenge to put new trees in where you have mature trees without disturbing the root lines of the existing trees. It's a pretty nice tree buffer back there now, and so that's why I put the tree preservation zone on it to preserve that.
Okay.
If for some reason some of those trees had to come out, we would buffer it.
With just additional,
We would put new trees in, yeah.
okay, pine trees, I'm assuming, like evergreens?
Yeah, spruce trees, yeah.
Talk to me about water on the north side of the site, from that reserve C. I see a catch basin on the east end of that. Can you speak to how the water that's like in your reserve is gonna get to that catch basin? Is it just, it's angled that way? Sheet 2.
There's no catch basin on the cul-de-sac. It's between lot 7 and 8. That's a mailbox.
I'm sorry, no, back along the, behind house 8.
Oh, sorry.
What-
Yeah, so it's kind of similar on the south side. There'll be a row of storm pipe with catch basin
Good
between
row.
lines. Yeah, there'll be a swale on top of that.
And then everything from the reserve, you will grade it, will you grade it, or will it exist, what could the grade that is existing?
It'll be great.
Okay, so it'll grade,
It currently falls that way now. Maybe a little bit goes up actually to the north, so we'll capture that with that swale, make sure it stays on our property.
okay.
The big arrows that are on there represent the flood route, which is essentially what we're talking about.
And at one point, and I think it still is here, there's a future sewer drain that would go in front of house 19. And then is it pipe under the road? I thought I had seen it somewhere, it's not jumping out of my mind this particular second. Underneath the road to potentially serve the guy's home on the north side?
Yeah, it doesn't show on here because it would just be a private 6-inch sewer, but we would provide a sewer stub to that property.
And will that show up on the drawings before anything is permitted?
The sewer department will require that anyway.
Okay.
I have a question about the boundary lines, Erica spoke to the current landscaping. What appears that there's a fence installed along the northern property line for Reserve C, where there's a proposed playset. Is there a reason that fencing is considered just on that northern segment boundary, not further along the farm residential?
Yeah, that was actually a request of the neighbor, Mr. Degaya, that lives there, to keep, if there's a congregation of children at that open space, that they have a buffer or border to keep them from wandering onto his property. Otherwise, that row of trees will stay. That's there now. It's kind of a natural buffer.
Have you considered, I haven't looked at the type of fence being proposed, but additional fencing perhaps along the back of the residences to provide for an additional barrier between farm residential and neighborhood?
We generally try to steer clear of putting fences in wooded areas, just because, again, you got trees and roots, and it's hard to get a straight line to work. But each property owner will have the ability to put a fence in on their property.
And are privacy fences allowed within your potential?
Privacy fences?
Yeah, I mean.
Like 8-foot tall privacy fences or just yard fences?
So I think what I'm thinking you're thinking is more of a yard fence. Right?
Yard
Keep my
fence.
kid in versus protecting the neighbor from seeing my house, right?
Yeah, that's a standard 48-inch tall black fence, which is what we proposed here, so it would be consistent across all the yards. That'd be one standard.
More questions? Not at this time, I don't think.
So I did want to make one statement in the beginning, is that this property is zoned FR1. So every single property in all of Orange Township was originally zoned FR1. So when people have come in, like where I live in our development, where you live, all of those properties were rezoned from FR1 into subdivision. So around 2000 or 2001, the zoning commission and the trustees got together and created something called the comprehensive land use plan, which maps out how the entire township will be developed. So do we have that, Michelle, a copy of that?
Like the 2018 version, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of describes the way the township was going to be built out. So it kept any kind of like commercial pretty much west of the railroad tracks was one of their concepts. If we do not have that plan, then anyone can rezone their property into anything they want. For example, gas stations and subdivisions, or almost anywhere, strip centers and things like that. So the goal of that was to make a plan for the township to ensure that residential areas stayed residential. So with that being said, this property, as was mentioned, is indicated as possibly being a single family 2 units per acre. So eventually it is possible that regardless of what happens today, it will be developed. It is most likely, I would assume, not going to stay FR1. I mean, it could, but in the plan it was indicated when this property, when anyone purchasing property, they usually look at the land use plan and they know what the requirements are. Now this plan does not meet the requirements currently, so there's high density, there are setbacks that are not being met, but in theory, if the plan met the zoning code to the T and there were no divergences and it met the land use plan, it would be very difficult to turn down. So I just wanted to at least come out and say that that's kind of the way that zoning works. A gas station would be difficult to request here. A strip center, even multifamily, would probably not be appropriate here. But the land use plan, even though it's not really legally binding, it is a guide that we can use to determine whether or not to approve a rezoning for an area. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Okay. All right, so the ground rules for public comments. We will ask that you obviously take turns, come to the microphone, state your name, state your address, keep your comments to around 3 minutes. If somebody else has already made the comment that you were going to make, come up, say, hi, my name's Erica, I live at X house, and I agree with everybody else that said anything, if you don't have any additional information. So just to keep us all cognizant of time, we don't need to repeat what other people have said, but please state that you agree if you do with that. And again, direct your questions to us, and then we will kind of consolidate that and address.
And then we'll have more questions, because we
Yes,
have more questions
correct,
later.
yes.
We have more questions for sure.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Tim Swords, I live at 7200 South Old State Road. Lived in the area since 2002 at that property. I probably have the least impact of that development from anyone here, being it's not so far away. But if that address sounds familiar, it's because I was here in 2019 for the farm on the corner of Old State Mortgage. And same comments were made. Can't really stop you from doing what you want to do with your land. But I was told by the trustees that we're not for this, and we're going to keep our eye on you. 7 years later, there's still dirt that had blowing on my property. Mud gets in my driveway. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I do have a couple of questions about that particular property. And one thing I've noticed is, even though there is a SWIP plan and runoff is supposed to be accounted for, doesn't always work as it's supposed to. So a question I would have is, as you enter from Old State Road, is there actually a downgrade and then you start to go up so that all water rushing out that roadway can't end up on Old State Road? If you're not familiar, Old State Road has been under 2.5 feet of water 4 times. So big deal. And we're talking 70 feet on my property, my driveway, also 2 feet underwater. Shouldn't be happening, but it does. So I would question that. The other thing you mentioned, clearly you're aware that there's a road widening project coming up. But then you mentioned your density, I'm assuming is based on the property line. You're aware of it. I think it should be factored in to the density calculations as to the roadway widening, and it's kind of obvious south of Orange Road what the minimum amount of widening would be, so easy to check. And then the final thing I wanted to comment on, you have the landscaping trees that kind of create a visual barrier. Who owns those trees? Who's responsible for them? Is going to make sure they stay watered for the first 3 years. And then is there a requirement that they have to remain, or the first homeowner can come in and just hack them down? Doesn't do any good to show anything on the plan if it's not meant to be permanent. So those are my comments. Like I said, I have the least amount of play in this matter, but I've had the most impact, I think, of anyone from a previous decision that has gone poorly.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, in 2019, which property were you referring to?
The Porsche development.
The Porsche, yeah.
Old State North.
That's
That's
just a mess,
been
yeah.
here for 7 years.
Yeah, and we did check, and there's no way, unfortunately, when something gets approved, we are not able to put any kind of time limit on it. I mean, unfortunately, which is
Right,
very
that's my point.
unfortunate.
Just because you can, doesn't mean something should happen.
Yeah, I don't think it was here when that was approved. Was that 2020?
2019.
Was it 2019?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brian Hunts. My address is 3300 Riverside Drive, Upper Arlington, Ohio. I'm here tonight appearing on behalf of Amanda Blondweiser, who resides directly behind this proposed development at 2097 Chicory Court. This application comes before you tonight after receiving 2 separate adverse recommendations. Delaware County Regional Planning recommended denial, and the Township Zoning Commission also recommended denial. Those consistent adverse recommendations matter because they demonstrate that 2 independent reviewing bodies looked at this proposal and reached the same conclusion, that as submitted, the rezoning should not be approved. Although the developer has revised the application following the Zoning Commission's adverse recommendation, the core defects remain unchanged. Specifically, even though the number of plots has been reduced from 21 to 19, and density from 2.5 to 2.28, the application still seeks a density above what the Township's comprehensive plan recommends for this site, and the application still requires several improvements. The 2018 comprehensive plan which it guides this board's decision, places this property in sub-area 10, the central residential heartland. That plan says that the township should continue large lots, 1 acre or more, fronting on South Old State Road, and that the remaining infill land should be developed with planned developments at 2 units per acre if served by central sanitary sewer. This application still departs from and exceeds those recommendations. That is why the prior recommendations against approval are so important. The Township Zoning Commission and county staff were not objecting to the idea of residential development generally. The problem was and still is at the level of density that this proposal intends for this site exceeds what's recommended. Importantly, the governing SFPRD criteria require conformity with the comprehensive plan in consideration of whether the development advances the general welfare of the township and immediate vicinity. The application itself quotes those standards, yet the revised plan still asks for 2.28 units per acre, still seeks reduced lot depth on lots 1 through 18, and still seeks reduced rear setbacks. So while the application has been revised, the issues have not been cured. The same central problem remains, which is that the developer is still asking the township to approve more density than its own comprehensive plan recommends for this property. This is not a case where the board must choose between approving this exact rezoning or forbidding all development. And I think you will hear from neighboring property owners that they are not blindly opposed to development. It is simply a question of whether or not this particular rezoning complies with the township's own adopted standards, and it does not. For those reasons, we respectfully ask this board to accept and adopt the zoning commission recommendation to deny the proposed rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Such, live at 2230 Jackson Court, Lewis Center. I'm a registered architect, and as I've said now 3 times up here, spent 18 years on West Coast Planning Commission. As I said the first time and the second time this application came up, I've never seen an application that came up before me in 18 years in which every dimensional thing you could put on either an individual plat or the overall lot required a variance. The developer has somewhat slow walked those numbers back down only after, as was just stated, receiving no votes from both Regional Planning Commission and your own zoning board here. And even with the 19 homes that we're currently at here, it has, as the last gentleman spoke to it, it does not eliminate the single ingress egress on a lot that is meant for a single family home. And this is FR1. I did a look up and down the entire zoning map for Orange Township. The only other location that you have single access like this that comes off of Old State is clear up at Hidden Cove, which is on the very north side of Orange Township. Nothing happening clearer towards State Street in Orange, which has demonstrated we have a huge traffic problem. Also from the developer standpoint, you can't, as I know well in architecture, and I've been trying to get development through many different boards, and I've had on both sides of this, you can't have it both ways. You can't argue that the road is going to be widened to 5 lanes. But then also play off the standpoint, well, but don't consider that right-of-way change that's going to happen for both the pond and the property itself. If we're going to play with those numbers, let's be consistent both with the density numbers, with the road change, as well as if the road's going to benefit the applicant in the long run. Half of the pond that sits there currently is in that right-of-way. That's all going to have to get redeveloped. From the density standpoint, that is all over the number. And again, I'm not opposed to development, but this is the developer's own doing. This property, if it was ever going to be developed, should be done as a single loaded side property. The reason that he can't meet the depth is he's out of property. I can't put properties on both sides of a road, meet the minimum right away, and without getting a variance. This is all self-induced. And the fact, the other big part of this whole thing, you've now created, if this gets approved, you've now created an isolated FR1 property unto itself. That should never happen. Anytime that these rezonings should happen, you should always have a contiguous group of those uses. If I live catty-corner to this, so we're gonna have the traffic problem that's already there. It's going to be more now too. I'm the president of the Enclave at Avenue Knoll HOA, which is a whole thing that's catty-corner to this. But we also have traffic choice. If we can't get out on South and State, we can always come back to the neighborhoods and get to Orange. There's very few properties by design, and as you heard, that require two means of ingress and egress from the property for that very reason. It gives you traffic choice. This does not. Like I said, the only other one didn't clear up at the end. There's a reason for that. So I urge you greatly to look at this as zoning is not a formality or assumed procedural approval. There are reasons certain properties should not be rezoned. This is one of them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Everly. I live at 6000 North Road in Orange Township. My father's property, Tom Washer, is adjacent to the property in question on the south edge, 7040 South Old State Road. I have two questions, maybe actually three questions. And I'm not a zoning expert, but obviously, but I am concerned, how can this proposal be considered single family planned residential with so many variances? That's my first question. My second question is, I would like to know why the developer stated he met with the residents to the south of the property. In his presentation tonight, he has not reached out to meet with my father, Tom Washer, who lives at 7040 South Old State Road, directly south to the property. He has owned the property since August of 2025 and has lived there since November 12th of 2025. My last question is, if this proposal does go through, which I would respectfully ask you to deny it, the trees on the border, the buffer that was stated that it would remain, are there any assurances that that would actually be remained and not just torn down with development? Our property, my husband and I at North Road was developed on both sides, and those trees were all torn down. Under Ohio Revised Code 519, zoning decisions must promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the residents, and there are real and practical concerns tied to this particular proposal. Drainage that's been mentioned, traffic, noise, strain on local infrastructure. These directly affect the lives of the residents who already live here. I respectfully ask that you deny this rezoning request as it does not serve the character and well-being of the current residents. And thank you for your time and for your service to this community.
Hello, I'm Christina DeFranco. I live at 7377 Trillium Drive. I'm in the Summerfield division. And I just want to say, it just crushes me when I hear that the parcel doesn't allow for depth. The parcel does allow for depth, that land does not allow for depth. And the road does not allow for depth. So the parcel does allow for it, just not the standards that we have. Now, I've only been here about 7 years, but I've seen this community change a lot. When I first moved here, there were no traffic lights pretty much from East Orange to Summerfield Village. I feel like the Dukes of Hazzard with those train tracks having stopped like the first time. So 20 years ago, when we made these plans, things looked a lot different, and this population has exploded. We don't have a housing crisis anymore. You look around, this is popping up everywhere. We have an infrastructure crisis now. We haven't caught up to the number of houses that we're approving. And I feel like the residents are shouldering that. And I feel like the trustees really represent the community. If we could just do zoning, we wouldn't have these meetings. They would just take a rule and say, good enough, and move on. And I also want to remind everyone that one of the reasons it was rejected was not the best interest of the community. It was not just because of the zoning itself, because we all brought up the traffic, and also with that new orange lot, I don't think traffic was considered as well when he did his traffic report. And those houses really should be considered because on Orange and Old State now, they're also going to be holding up a lot of traffic, and now you're putting up 19, God forbid, new houses, and they're going to hold up even more traffic with one egress. So we don't live in a vacuum. We can't just say, it's probably gonna be okay, because it's really us that's shouldering these extra traffic, the extra drainage, the extra construction, extra noise. And I mentioned last time also, my kids go to Glen Oak, it's saturated. I can't fit any more kids in that school. That school is gonna be zoned for their middle school, their elementary school, their high school, and there's really nowhere you can put this. I mean, we make these levies, and I'm happy to do it for the community. We have Berlin, we did Sawmill, but this area is saturated. There's gonna be no extra schools for us, and no one's gonna save us. The only thing that can help us is not allowing 19 houses to exist on this property right now. So, thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me, cookies. My name is Stephanie Hazelwood. I live at 7080 South Old State Road. So I am 3 properties down from going south on Old State. And so I would like to piggyback on the first neighbor that said, you know, basically on the character, we got a lot of the statistics and numbers, but just on the interest, I'm gonna read. My family and I moved here just 4 years ago. At the time, I was pregnant with our second child. We had just returned to Central Ohio after living in Boston. We found this property. We were ecstatic. It had everything we hoped for, but what made it truly special was the land. Today, both of our kids, I'm homeschooled, spend most of their days exploring, imagining, and enjoying what feels like their own little oasis. My husband and I treasure that because our yard isn't just beautiful, it's safe, it's private, and gives our kids to roam and grow freely. To think that this could now be in jeopardy is devastating for us. We imagine raising our kids here without ever worrying about people crossing through our yard or the character of our home changing so drastically. Never in our wildest dreams would we imagine that someone would purchase a nearby property and propose what was 24 and gone down to now 19 home private neighborhood. 1 house, 2 houses, maybe 3, maybe even 4, but 19 is unimaginable. And as I sit at my driveway and just wait for somebody to let me out is also insane. So to think that this would just make everything worse is pretty crazy. But with that, thank you for giving us a chance to share our perspective. We truly hope you will consider how profoundly this development would impact the families who live along this stretch in South Old State and how much we actually stand to lose. Thank you.
I'm Craig Sutherland. I live at 2577 Colesbridge Drive. I have lived here for 23 years, so I've seen this whole area develop, and I appreciate the fact that somebody wants to come in and build more and add to the community. Not to belabor the point, I'm not going to talk about traffic because anyone with an ounce of sense knows it's a traffic problem, so I'm going to address safety. Being on Colesbridge, it's been an issue, and I've been in front of this group before talking about development that's come up, and I've made you aware of the fact that there's issues with people being frustrated, impatient because of the lack of movement on Old State pretty much throughout the day. My neighborhood has become cut through. We have special needs children in our neighborhood, and previously we had children who were deaf. And because of the frustration, people are cutting through my neighborhood and risking safety. I want to hear about, we have traffic plans for 2027, because if that's the case, there should be nothing approved with a single entrance and exit off of Old State. I don't care how many homes you want to put on there. It's already a problem. You guys know there's been accidents right at my street to the point where the street sign was knocked down because people are pissed off and frustrated cutting through my neighborhood. I physically have to go out in the street and stop cars to tell them to slow down because it's at risk. As a homeowner, I shouldn't have to at any time because of traffic. People won't let us in and out of our streets. So if I want to go south on Old State in the morning, I have to go north to go to the traffic light and take a left to cut through a park to go all the way to get back. Traffic is an issue. but you have a safety issue, a big safety issue. And if you're going to approve this, that's without saying that multiple years that it would take for this to develop. Think of the heavy equipment now that will be coming down Old State, coming in and out of that area. In front, basically in front of my street again. There's more to consider here besides how many homes and putting more things in the community. You have a traffic issue. And until that's addressed, you're putting people at risk from a safety standpoint, whether they're walking in their community, whether they're trying to get in and out of their community, because of people's impatience. I think you need to address that first before you start adding more cars in and out on them.
Hello, I'm Kirk McDowell, 7247 Trillium Drive, Summerville Village, and I'm also on the homeowner association board. Everybody else has pretty much stolen everything I wanted to say, so I'm going to just cover a couple of different points that haven't been brought up. The first is, you mentioned that in Summerfield, yes, we do have some lots that are 60 feet wide, but we are a 25, 26-year-old neighborhood, and some of them were zoned under 75 and some were 60, so yes, half and half were 75 and half were 60. The density bonuses, that's never been codified in Orange Township other than, I asked Robin this week, other than the overlay on 23. So shouldn't be anything that gives you over the density. And then also the road widening gives you even more dense. At the zoning commission, the zoning commissioner asked if they would adjust the plan to meet the side and the rear and the density with the new code, and he said, no, I'm going to go with, proceed with the plan I have, which is fine, it's his right. But then he revised it because he realized there was pushback. So what was brought up at the zoning commission meeting is not what's here today. He's trying to figure out where the line is that gets it approved. And lastly, ORC section 509.12 references the variances that strict enforcement causes unnecessary hardship. The only hardship is his bottom line. So that does not constitute a hardship for the township. Thank you.
Yes?
Good evening. My name is Tom Washer. I am the new owner of the property at 7040 South Old State Road. My property is on the southern edge of the property being discussed tonight. I arrived 5 months ago from Fort Myers, and I have never been visited by the developer, probably because I arrived too late. When my wife and I closed on the property on 7040 in late August, we were totally unaware that the adjacent property would be rezoned from farm residential to single-family planned residential. Had we known this, we would have looked elsewhere. We wanted property with mature trees and expansive lawns, reminiscent of our past homes in Granville, Ohio, and Midland, Michigan. We certainly did not want to buff up against a 19-unit subdivision squeezed into an 8 1/3 acre lot. Our first house in Granville was on 3 acres. Our second house was a 25-acre farm. Our 2 children grew up under those conditions. When we moved to Midland, Michigan, again we bought property with acreage and mature trees, again providing privacy and serenity. After retired we moved to Fort Myers to help my wife's mother for the next 23 years. To be close enough to my mother-in-law, we were reduced to living on 1/6 of an acre lot. That's not fun. We reduced to large property. When she passed 2 years ago, we wanted to move back up to Ohio to be closer to our own children and grandchildren. We asked our children to help us find single-story properties with acreage and mature trees. The real estate market for that combination was hot during July and August. As soon as they found a suitable location, someone else bought it. We had to move quick. When they found the property at 7040, It was exactly what we wanted, and we could now return to having mature trees and expansive lawns. Why not keep the existing farm residential zoning at 6980 South Old State Road and maintain the continuity, serenity, and privacy that now exists for 9 contiguous properties? Why not accept the wishes of the nearby owners? I ask you not to approve this zoning request. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Peter DeGaia. I live at 6976 South Old State. I am the mirror image of Tom, who was just up here. I'm the northern property to this one. I share the longest border with this property. My family and I have been living here for over 21 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this except for the last 2 meetings. So, I am one of the neighbors of this neighborhood. Many of you've already heard several of them speak tonight. To speak here against this proposal. The applicant's proposal starts off on the front page picturing a misrepresentation of our neighborhood, and the majority of the language in the proposal goes to great lengths to misrepresent where it is located. It provides a fiction of being surrounded by subdivision houses to pretend it's not in the middle of our existing long-established FR1 neighborhood, and to pretend that me and others that are here tonight do not exist. We do exist, that's why we're here. We're here to express our opposition to this and to let you know we are a neighborhood and we want to continue to be a neighborhood. The fact is, he's in the middle of not subdivision houses, he's in the middle of our neighborhood. He's not even the end piece of our neighborhood, he's in the center. To me and all the other neighbors who have come here tonight, please let us be seen, to be heard, and I implore you all as trustees to listen to us on our concerns. The application tries to circuitously weave around simultaneously both the old zoning code and the new one, where the applicant cherry picks which parts to comply with while somehow complying with neither zoning code and hoping that no one would notice. Well, people did notice. It was denied twice. And I won't go into all the details, but both the Delaware County Regional Planning Commission as well as Orange Township zoning. It is also multiply non-compliant with the zoning code and the comprehensive land use plan. He further in his application states, and I quote in section 10.07 subsection D, quote, "It is due to the restricted dimensions of the underlying parcel." Yep, that's the end of my quote. Yep, it doesn't fit. The developer knew this during the due diligence phase before he even purchased it. That's the risk he took proposing this and buying this property. That is not the problem with the parcel. That is something he was already aware of. It's a problem with the proposal. His own plan proves with the variances that it doesn't fit on this parcel. All these divergences do nothing more than prove that this doesn't fit. Maybe there's a good reason it was already zoned at FR1. In the same section, the applicant goes on to say, quote, it is not out of character for the immediate area. Yes, it is. It's located in the middle of a long-established and existing FR1 neighborhood. It is completely out of character. Over 80% of this property's borders are not subdivision houses. This is not some gradual, natural, organic, slowly over time from the end to end change to the neighborhood. This is an abrupt and massive change going off in the middle of our neighborhood. The applicant stated on October 28th at the Orange Township Zoning Commission meeting that he wanted to, quote, emulate and mirror Summerfield Village. The applicant stated as well that his application, quote, complies with the design standards of that subdivision, referring to Summerfield. So to try to hold us, the developer, to a different set of standards doesn't seem to be, quote, in my best interest. Well, he's right. This is not in his interest to comply with those. And the different set of standards he's referring to is the Orange Township Zoning Code. You should absolutely hold this application to that standard. But okay, fine, I'll bite for a second. Give me 1 minute, and let's actually go ahead and hold the applicant to those Summerfield Village design standards that he's cherry-picked to choose from. My question for you guys is, where are the multiple egresses then? Summerfield Village has them. The next question is, where's your over 100-foot barrier that Summerfield put in purposely to put a buffer between our FR1 zone neighborhood and their subdivision. Are you willing to put a 100-foot barrier both to your north and to your south FR1 neighborhood properties now? That for us. The applicant also stated on October 28th, quote, if we have fewer lots to sell, then they're going to be more expensive. Well, that's great. So it's going to be, they could be less dense, and the property values could be more in alignment with our FR1 properties on Old State then. Maybe we should consider having that proposal instead. Excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat. He also says the other properties on South Old State are not large enough to subdivide into a subdivision. Well, it turns out his isn't either. Otherwise, there would be a street with houses on one side of it, not both sides of it. He's not proposing that. The applicant could have tried to buy the neighboring properties too. One was even for sale at the exact same time as you just heard from the other neighbor. Or he could have applied to build additional homes on his FR1 parcel without even needing to change the zoning, neither of which he did. This was his choice. All of us in our neighborhood bought our FR1 zone neighborhood property specifically not to live in a subdivision. We paid for this extra privacy and space with a lot more yard maintenance and a lot more in property taxes. This proposal destroys the value of our FR1 properties in two distinct ways. One, he's proposing to sell his properties for the 650 range, and the most recent sale in our contiguous section was for $800,000. This is significantly lower. This proposal would also eliminate the whole reason for buying an FR1 by having those 18 additional homes staring straight into our properties that were never configured for privacy and enjoyment from those angles. Who would want to buy our properties now? Keep in mind, he's not developing it as an FR1. He's changing the zoning right in the middle of us. He's proposing to move an entire subdivision into the middle of our neighborhood. Zoning needs to be about protecting the people who already live in the area, as well as guidelines for developers. Let's make sure this does both. You as trustees are setting a precedent here tonight. Here's what that could look like if you do decide to improve this. The future for this precedent, for just this small, already congested section of Old State, would result if we were all then forced to develop our properties, which we will likely have to if this happens. You would then have 47 houses sitting here with an additional over 788 daily car trips in just this one small section of Old State. Now imagine that precedent spreading up and down all of Old State and to all the other FR1 properties in Orange Township. There would be no second egresses, no lights, just roads pouring out into Old State from all of these properties. I'm pretty sure nobody in this room wants that to happen. At the March 10th meeting for the Orange Township Zoning Commission, the applicant also stated, quote, any part of this property that currently drains off-site won't do that anymore. It will all be collected on-site, brought to our retention pond, and discharged out to a pipe. Really? Where does this pipe go? It drains off-site, on my property, at my septic system. In addition, the drainage plan as proposed does not adequately handle the amount of stormwater from flooding my property, as many of you have already seen. Before I get to my conclusion, I did have one neighbor that couldn't come tonight, and they, for medical reasons, they felt so strongly about it, they actually drove to my property to hand deliver this to me still with their medical issues. It is Dennis and Shelley Such. They are longtime residents of our neighborhood. Dennis Such used to be on the Orange Township zoning before. They live at 7110 South Old State Road. This was hand delivered to me yesterday. Let me just read it real quick. April 14th, 2026, to the Orange Township Trustees, Erica Koss, Lisa Knapp, Michael Ringel. As longtime residents of Orange Township, my husband and I have seen considerable growth, starting with the shores, large houses built on large lots. We are not opposed to more subdivisions, but we do feel one with very small lots and smaller houses are not appropriate between the large lots with single-family homes, meaning in our neighborhood. This proposal of 19 houses on 8 acres is too dense in this location. Thank you for your consideration, Shelley and Dennis Such. Now, in conclusion, this application has already been denied twice. It doesn't comply with multiple things, such as the comprehensive land use plan and the zoning. It's proposing changing the zoning in the middle of the long-established and existing neighborhood, and multiple times he doesn't even want to comply with the zoning that he's requested. It materially and adversely impacts the neighborhood values and will flood my property and its septic system. Look, he knew all of these things before he bought the property. This is not Orange Township's problem. This is not our neighborhood's problem. It's not the parcel's problem. It's only a problem with the proposal. It doesn't fit the local vicinity and general welfare of the community. It doesn't fit the neighborhood it's actually in. It doesn't even fit the parcel it's on. How many more reasons do we need to deny this? Please do not set this as the precedent just 40 days into the new zoning for all FR1s in Orange Township. Thank you for your time and for listening to us. My neighbors and I urge you all to deny this application, please. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Rick Ross. I live at 6792 South Old State Road. Like Peter, I've been here 24 years in my home. My wife Susie has lived there 40 plus years. We are writing in regard to the zoning hearing this evening for 6980 SOS LLC for the property at 6980 South Old State Road. We have several concerns about this rezoning as proposed. Although the applicant has adjusted the application, it is still a poor fit for the site. The size of the lots and distance between the homes is not consistent with the farm residential sites on either side. It brings a dense feel in the midst of housing along South Old State Road that is faced with larger estate-type lots of 0.75 to 5 acres each. Even a new subdivision across the street from this site is less dense and has large homes that are more consistent with the area. We are aware that the actual density is determined based on the entire site acreage. But with a large pond and a winding access drive, the additionally proposed 18 lots and 19 are shoehorned into a space that makes the site look very crowded. This directly affects the neighbors on either side. With the larger existing homes, front lawn and pond on the front half of the site, all of the green space is centralized, leaving an urban type density crowded into the back half of the site. The new homes will have very little green space, and the proposed parking/playground space is substandard compared to those types of amenities at other developments. This subdivision will be just like the others along South Old State Road, with the majority of the green space allotment placed along the frontage at the road, only to disappear once the road is widened. Another concern is that adding housing area of this density will overflow the existing pond, which is not in very good repair. The applicant stated at the previous meeting that the overflow from the site goes into the pond, and overflow from the pond goes into an area a few hundred feet north of the site where there is a culvert under the road. That area is a swale in our front yard. There is currently an issue with large amounts of rainwater runoff in the subdivision behind us, overflowing into our yard and at times near our driveway because the culvert under the road is blocked and too small to handle the capacity. At the last meeting on this application, a member of the zoning board was very willing to dismiss my concerns because he said the Delaware County Engineer Department will make sure it channels water correctly. Most of us who live in the area can cite at least one area nearby where the engineering plans are less than ideal. There is one directly next to our property. I know there are plans for the widening of our road, and that presents more concerns in regards to runoff from the site at 6980. Will the reduction in the size of the pond due to the widening allow adequate room for the runoff from the site? B, will the drastic change in the swale in our yard be able to handle additional runoff from the site that cannot hold its own water retention? Lastly, the application was not approved by Delaware Regional Planning Commission because it does not fit within the comprehensive plan for Orange Township. In itself, that's a reason enough to deny this application. Our township is a valued area within Delaware County. We do not need to allow development that does not meet our plan. Homes are highly desirable and bring prices that reflect that. Larger homes on estate-sized lots of this property property can be better fit with the existing homes and bring higher prices out of development of smaller homes stacked on top of each other. Not too long ago, a development on Lewis Center Road was turned down by zoning board and ultimately approved by board of trustees. We were assured that the trees and green areas would be preserved in exchange for stacking lots of small homes on lesser sections of the site with almost zero setback between them. I can speak for others in this township who see this development as a terrible mistake. The developer accidentally clear-cut the green areas and trees, and we are now stuck with a development that sticks out like a sore thumb right down the street from $1 million plus home. That completed development should be a reminder that Orange Township deserves better. Over the years, we have attended countless township meetings for our new developments, and more recently for our new zoning code, to attempt to influence decisions that help ensure that our township, and especially our neighborhood along South Old State, is well preserved and not turned into an unrelated catch-all of rentals, businesses, and infill communities. I'm a realist who realizes that property owners have a right to develop their land. I ask that you deny this application so the developer can go back to the drawing board and find a solution that is better fit for our area. Thank you.
I'm going to be quick. Mine's really short since everybody's already talking. I'm not going to regurgitate what everybody already said tonight. My name is Matt Everly. I live at 6000 North Road. My father-in-law lives at the property adjacent to the property in question. I just want to go on record. I'm not going to, like I said, I have a list, but everybody's already said it. I just want to go on record that I agree with everybody's opinions here tonight about this development. I just want to say the local community has clearly and frequently expressed that they do not want this. And if this does pass, it's obvious you're listening for one voice and not many voices that sit here tonight. Next.
All right, hi, my name is Christine Trabellis. I live at 2624 Colchbridge Drive, Lewis Center, Ohio. I'm here tonight as a private citizen, but I'm also a licensed architect and I'm a certified planner. I specialized in urban design. I know the property is going to be developed. I understand that. I have no problem with the single family use. I have concerns about the density, the same that everybody else here has expressed. I also have concerns about the number of variances that other people here have expressed. In the past, due to congestion on South Old State, the zoning commission sort of set a standard of no variances because of the traffic issues. This applied to the enclave at Knoll, which people have talked about. This also applied to the development at South Old State and Orange Road, which has also been discussed. Both of those properties had major engineering difficulties. It took them a while to develop. They were with the retention ponds, which this one also has an issue with. So I would say that, no variances. Let's stick to the standard. If variances are needed, then either the site is too small or there are too many units on the site. That is what we told people in the past. I think it should apply today. The other issue that people have brought up is a developer keeps referring to the densities and setbacks at Summerfield Village. Summerfield Village is near this site. First of all, I would say that it was zoned over 20 years ago. The zoning code has changed several times since then. Those standards no longer apply. Second of all, I would say the subdivision is not off of Old State Road. It is technically off of Orange. It is linked to Old State because developers have worked hard to have connectivity between those neighborhoods so you do not create traffic backlog like we have on Old State. So that is one thing. The other thing I might comment about is after reviewing several development plans, I would suggest that the site plan for this development plan have setbacks, right-of-ways clearly labeled on the site. And the reason for that is the retention pond. Like we've heard, there are some engineering issues with that pond. The other issue also in my mind being that technically retention ponds are not allowed in front yards now per our zoning code. reconfiguring the site. It's no longer in the front yard. It is, however, off a busy road that has requirements for setbacks for those retention ponds, so cars do not end up in the retention pond like has happened in the past, I believe, at Summerfield Village.
Yes.
Okay. So, we don't want history to repeat itself. The other thing is what is going to happen with that retention pond and the property when the road widens. We need to plan that now, not in the future. So, the other thing I might bring up is the traffic study. I've mentioned this before. The traffic study is based on data that was collected in June. That is when school is out. That is not an accurate representation of the traffic on South Old State. A more accurate representation would be when school is in session, which adequately reflects how many teenagers are driving to school, how many school buses, how many parents are dropping off or picking up their kids from school. That is not calculated in the data presented before us. And sort of lastly, if you all do decide to proceed with this zoning application, I would also address the mail kiosk and play area. Generally, mail kiosks need parking by them. I know everybody thinks that people are going to walk there. They are going to drive there on their way home, especially if it's raining. And same with play area. He mentions that there is a play area, but yet there is no actual concrete design and or plan of that play area, except maybe a gazebo, maybe a play set, something of that nature. And the other thing is the entry sign. If it is supposed to be part of this application, setbacks need to be labeled. That entry sign needs to be designed. In particular, if it's lit, we need to make sure that the lighting does not interfere with the headlights of traffic. So that's about all I have to say. My neighbors, I think, have also said pretty well that we have concerns about this plan. Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name's Amanda Leimeister. I live at 2097 Chicory Court. So I have property that is adjacent to this lot in Summerfield Village. I feel like my neighbors have done a very good job summarizing a lot of the concerns that we have, but I would like to highlight a couple things. You know, one of the first statements from the developer is that he has made all of these concessions. Well, are they truly concessions when you start with 24 houses, which isn't within any of the parameters of code, and then you cut to 21, which still isn't within parameters of code, and now you cut to 19, and you still don't fit parameters of code. So how is it really a concession or, you know, working with neighbors when we should have started with 16 houses to begin with and should be negotiating from there? When you look at the averages for the surrounding communities around us, Summerfield Village is at 2.18 houses per acre, Glen Oak Estates 1.77, Elm Crossing 1.92, Lakeshore 1.36, and the South Old State Road Orange is 1.96. So if you average those, it's only 1.8 houses per acre. I also would ask, because I am not a developer, I am not an engineer, I'm a nurse, that we should do our due diligence regarding this one egress. This one attachment to South Old State Road, is there a secondary somebody that should be looking and approving this? Because it's clearly not safe. I haven't looked through well enough to see that this was actually approved and is okay. I would like to highlight that, you know, we should be reminded that just because something fits within the rules and regulations of zoning code doesn't mean that it should be approved. And this is also true from a nursing standpoint. I can have a lot of patients that would fit the criteria of a mitral valve replacement, but if it's not going to benefit their life, then, and there are other comorbidities that would say that we shouldn't be doing this, then I'm not going to do it, okay? And I would ask you to kind of end with, what if
these were your homes, and I ask you to put yourself in the shoes of the residents that are currently living here. And remember that you are setting precedent for the rest of this FR1 land, and that this property should be fitting with the community and enhancing this health, safety, and generate and benefit the general welfare of not just the developers' pocketbooks, but also the current people that live here. Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Robert Holman. I live at 2265 Jackson Court in the enclave at Abbey Knoll, across Knoll State from this property. And I don't have much more to add than most of my friends and neighbors have added here, as they've all been very well spoken, and I don't have prepared remarks, as I've come with a short notice. But I would, sort of reflecting on this, I want to personally thank the township for posting these on their social media. It's just easier for me to know that they're just looking at it on there. Certainly can see this does not meet the character and overall, I think the community plan is reflected by the sentiments we've heard here tonight, as well as certainly see the connectivity and the ingress and egress has been a common theme. As one of the things certainly people have been thinking from an automobile standpoint, I'm at Walter. I took one of my work calls walking around the township hall park here earlier today. There's no pedestrian or multi-use connectivity from this neighborhood either. Unless it is included in the 2728 old state widening, which I don't have full details of. But it does certainly mirror some of the past from the other developments, right, that does not connect, whether that's in the interest of those residents or not. I don't want to presume to speak for them. But certainly we're going to make sure that we're not entering these smaller lots of a balkanization, if you will, of the splintering of these small mini developments throughout the township. And then we have something that is consistent and connected with the community as a whole. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Satya Marivan, 2097 Chakri Court. I agree with all the points that were made by the previous speakers. I just want to add that there is a fire station that's at 500 feet on the same road that is going to be affected by the traffic. And it is not just this construction, but also the portion that has two entrances, both to Southwest State Road. And I don't have to tell you that those kind of delays can be life-threatening. The last thing we want is the community sued for something like negligence when we were rezoning something that people are easily avoiding. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Pam Mock. I'm at 7060 Southwood State Road. Yeah, we've lived here 33 years. Yeah, we've watched all this growth, and it's been good. I mean, heavens, there's enough grocery stores around to keep you busy. But this particular development doesn't fit in the road. It's in the middle of everything. And we have chosen to live in this area, and we love it. So I agree with everything everybody else has said, and please don't zone this the way you want it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Stephen Mock, 7060 Southwold State. Just want to thank you for listening to us. There really isn't anything else I can add. I agree with everything, all the comments that everybody's made. Just want to go on public record that we took this also. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. So that means we will not have an opportunity for any of the residents to ask any questions or clarification, just to kind of keep things orderly if we can. I'm going to do my best, and Mike and Lisa help me out if I miss questions, because obviously there's a lot of comments, so thank you for all of that. That's helpful. All right, John, the trees and maintaining them, speaking specifically, I believe, to the proposed new trees, the buffering trees along the edges of the property, and can owners remove them?
Well, trees in the open space are going to be HOA owned and maintained. Trees that are planted on private property would be owned and maintained by those property owners. I can't imagine why anybody would want to take out a tree buffer, but we wouldn't be able to police that, nor would the township.
Okay, so if they died, they would need to be replaced?
I don't know if I could even put a rule in the HOA docs about that. I guess we probably could. I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, we could go the preservation zone, and we've done that before. But...
Right, or take a tree inventory.
Mm-hmm.
On private property. Mm-hmm. Really? I'm down for that.
So I guess that follow-up question that we also had was assurances that the tree preservation zones would remain. As one of the residents brought up, we did have a development that we zoned that they were supposed to keep all the trees along North Road or Green Meadow, whatever the name is of that particular point, and that those did not stay. So how do we have assurances that
So that was actually a good point that they brought up. If there's an area where we have a tree preservation zone, we have to take some trees out to put in the sewer or to put in some utilities, then we can do a tree replacement policy. I'd have to think on how that is worded. We did something similar at another development in Orange Cove. So, our objective is to have the same tree buffer that the neighbors would want to have. So we certainly would want to repopulate those areas if the trees have to come out.
Okay. One of the other residents, I think it was Peter, the guy mentioned about how when a new, to them, subdivisions were put in, specifically like Summerfield and Glen Oak, there was a 100-foot barrier between the FR property and the single-family plan residential. Whereas obviously that's not the case here.
Well, it wasn't the case there either, or these lots wouldn't be 20 feet from my property line.
Okay. Can you talk to me about the pond rework? Explain what the new shape of the pond would be. There's obviously a lot of concern about drainage.
Yeah, so the plan shows the future condition. It doesn't show existing condition. It shows the future right-of-way drop. It shows the future edge of pavement. It shows the future sidewalk that's being put in on the road. And the pond that's out there now is substantially bigger than it needs to be for a retention pond. So even if we reduce the size of that pond, it's going to be more than adequate capacity for stormwater control. I know this because I ran the numbers myself.
Okay. And my understanding is the existing pond there is like seepage underneath the driveway into the property to the north.
That's probably true because there's really not a good outlet for that pond, but we're going to be completely reworking the pond. The current outlet for that pond is a corrugated metal pipe that actually runs west to a low spot on this property that then migrates north into the Gaia property and meanders its way back out to South Old State Road to the same culvert that we're going to discharge to. So we're bypassing that whole route that it takes right now and taking it directly into a pipe system that will go out to that existing culvert. The county engineer signed off on this drainage plan. The comment that it's going into this leach field is not correct. It's going to be in the right of way. So maybe its interpretation of the way the plan shows it, you may think that, but that's not the case. It'll be built in the public right of way.
Okay.
And nothing's going to get done based on the zoning plan. All of these improvements are going to be done based on an engineering plan signed off by a professional engineer and approved by the county engineer. They're certainly not going to let us discharge a pipe into somebody's septic system. So.
Okay, how do you, when you have a pond that's existing, just for our knowledge, and then you have to make it bigger and all that, or smaller, rework it, whatever. There's a lot of water in it right now. How do you dig out a pond that is currently full of water?
So
where's the water going?
You dig what's called I'm trying to think of the technical term for it. You dig a pit, basically, you pump the water into that, it's filtered properly, and it'll discharge overland into the low spots on this property over a controlled period of time. Then we dig out the pond, we line the pond with new clay so that it doesn't have that same groundwater seepage, because we don't know how it was built. It was built a long time ago when that house was built. And it'll follow the same protocol as any new pond construction would at that point. And then everything, so that's the first thing that gets done.
Okay, so basically the water that's currently sitting in the pond, like you said, is going to.
It'll be controlled, pumped out onto this property.
Onto this property, but how do you make sure that it doesn't, say, go to the neighboring properties
Because
in that time?
it's going to be controlled. It's going to be done with a maximum 3-inch pump, and it's going to be controlled. If that proves to be inadequate, we find another way to do it into the road right away, I guess. There's an existing ditch network in the road right away, and we would follow that. To do that, we'll need a permit from the county engineer. We're going to need to coordinate with them anyway. Again, these are really not zoning issues, but I understand the question, and I
This is the opportunity for people
concern.
to ask the questions.
Sure.
They don't, there's not really an opportunity for them at another time. Okay, speak to Christine's comment about the mail kiosk and parking and play area, that kind of stuff.
Well, for a 19 lot subdivision, you wouldn't normally see, it's just gonna be one kiosk. People may park along the curb to get their mail, but they're not gonna leave their car there. They're gonna get back in their car and then go back home with it. Similarly with, with the park, it's a walkable in that neighborhood. People would walk to the park. There's gonna be no parking signs in the cul-de-sac.
So if there's no parking signs in the cul-de-sac, how do I park my car to get in there?
Well, it's not considered parking if you're there for 30 seconds. If we have to design a couple pull-off spots, we can, but I don't think it's gonna be required. It's certainly not required by the postal service.
And then just so the residents are clear, so my understanding with the road widening on South Old State is that on both sides of the road, the county will be putting in path, right? So whether one side sidewalk, one side is the bike path. I don't know which one is which at this time. So there will be connectivity from a pedestrian-oriented thing along.
Our original plan had connectivity to the path within Summerfield Village, but they asked me to take that out. Because that's privately owned and it's not part of the network for the township.
Okay, those were the questions that I caught from the residents.
I caught a zoning question, just like a technicality. Somebody asked how does the SFPRD have so many variances, and I think because it's a planned residential district, the applicant is allowed to submit as many variances or divergences, whatever word you want to use, with their submittal. That does not mean the trustees will approve or the zoning commission will approve, but they do have the ability to submit as many as they would like.
Can you speak to the sightline?
Yeah, I thought that there was a note, there is a note about the entrance feature and the top lot on page 3 of the development plan. I think developers might have missed that. Landscaping and lighting will provide vital elements to benefit the feature aesthetically and increase visibility. All such elements will comply with zoning text. Zoning text is your standard language.
And so when people submit for planned districts, if people want, if applicants want certain signage standards that differ from our regular signage standards, that they should be included in the planned district. If it's silent, which this more or less is, then it kicks back to our standard signage regulations in Article 22 of our zoning code. So this would be required to comply with one of our standards, which does include lighting.
Okay, thank you. Do you guys have other questions?
Did we capture all the questions the residents had? Did we miss anything?
I mean, I know a lot of the concerns were traffic and density and the divergences, but I think question-wise, I thought that was everything I was able to see.
I can speak to school, that kind of stuff, the number of students. So I serve on the Allentown School District Redistricting Committee. they use a 0.8 students per single family home is what across the district has been the number of students that they calculate when they have a new development, basically. So that would be about 15 students. So just so you guys are aware, and again, this is not a zoning, we can't zone on schools, we can't zone on traffic, but just so you guys are aware, that's 15 students, that's across the K through 12 gamut of students. And I mean, yes, if they're gonna bus, that's gonna come for elementary, middle, and high school, yes, that would be the case. But they, fortunately, are redistricting all the time. So there will be fluctuation of kids in different places and that kind of stuff. And the school's really quite good at figuring that out. And I completely understand the schools are overcrowded. My kids attend Orange, middle, and high, and there's not a room to pass in the hallways. But I don't feel, from my perspective, that 15 students is going to break the school system.
But I would like to add to that, they actually have, and I don't know what it would be for this, but the higher density, they actually have like there's like a variation for certain homes, there's higher density. So this might fit into a slightly higher density because as far as kids, single family, it's a little bit less expensive maybe than some other homes. So it might be, I think they go up to like 1.2 kids per house depending. So the average is 0.8, but yeah, some
single family. Right.
Yeah.
So like an apartment complex, they use the numbers of 0.2 students.
Yeah, but there's more apartments.
But there's more apartments.
But yeah, they have put a few things out that are more or less subdivision dependent, like an empty nester household or a development might have one student per 50 homes. So it's all on the average, but the higher density single family homes like this might create more than 15 students, maybe 25 or something, yeah.
I do appreciate Christine's comment that the traffic study, because I wasn't concerned about the traffic study, because again, it's 19 houses on the street it's a giant mess. I don't think that these additional 19 houses are going to. Yeah, I do. I drive every day. I don't think it's going to, I mean, yes, it's going to make it worse, but I don't think it's going to kill the street, basically. But that being said, I do like Christine's comment that the traffic study was done in June, which was not during school time. So that's a little tidbit that was helpful to hear tonight. Thank you.
Right, it's adding a relatively small number of cars.
To the already mess that we have.
However, they're all coming out one road.
My date on this traffic study says September 2025. Which would have been after.
That would have been after school, yes. I was just going
The numbers from North Street that they use to base those calculations are from June until the traffic study.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, yeah. John, where in here does it say that just one ingress and egress is acceptable? Or does it just, I couldn't find that. Or does it just not mention?
I know the fire department also has a say in that, and they did review and approve the plans.
So a couple years ago, Mike Clark, who's our head of prevention, who approves, looks at drawings, and that's his one for his role. He gave me a copy of the 2017 Ohio Fire Code that said 1 or 2 family dwelling residential developments of 1 or 2 family dwellings where the number of dwelling units exceeds 30 shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads. So that is where you would have to have 2, if you have 30 houses or more, then you have to have 2 entrances into your subdivision.
And does the county engineer use that standard? Is that?
That I don't know.
I don't know.
I would assume.
So those are different standards, and Trustee Knapp, I think what you'll be looking for is the letter from the engineer's office, which should be in the close to utility letters in your packet.
I saw that, but it didn't mention, I didn't see that it mentioned ingress or egress.
I mean, the fact is, we don't have access to another.
So that could mean that it was never intended to be a subdivision on that parcel.
Exactly. Yeah, because I saw it, for the September 8th, it talked about.
But we are below that threshold of the fire.
You are.
Significant.
Yeah, And, I did want to make the point that someone said the Hidden Cove is the only subdivision with just one ingress, egress, and that. There is one that was just recently approved at some point that's just south of it but hasn't been built.
There's one right behind Orange Middle School track. That one is 10 houses on a front-loaded street.
Yes.
That's one entrance. And then John also, the property that he lives on off of South Old State across from Orange High School remind me how many houses do you own?
21.
21 houses on, how many acres was that?
12
acres. So that also just had one entrance as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
the new one he just built too is a single cul-de-sac.
But-
South of Hollenbeck Road.
Michelle, are you familiar, what's that neighborhood that I'm not sure if it's been built or not, but it's up south of, just a single street.
Be on the west side of South Old, I'm sorry, on the east
The
side of
east
South
side,
Old
yeah, I
State.
mean-
Yeah, it's the reserve of that storm.
But those are,
It is technically part of
Does it
it.
back up to,
But
back
yes,
up,
it is, it's.
and it doesn't
one road
connect to
cul-de-sac,
any other
yeah, it
development.
is.
no, backs up to Elm, or Woods, or Alma Creek or something? Where does it back up? It backs up to a bunch of woods, I guess.
Yes, Creek.
Is it Elm Creek? Okay. But I wanted to point out the difference is that the two I mentioned are boulevard entrances. They're not just a single street, so that's
It's a
one
boulevard.
where it's a separate entrance. There's a boulevard in the middle, so you have a separate lane for in and a separate lane for out that are actually separated, versus just a single lane in. So that for safety purposes, if one entrance is blocked, you can access the other one. You can go in it. So it's kind of like they converge to one road, and then there's usually some kind of landscaping in between. So basically two entrances to the subdivision built into one. So if you had an accident right there or some other kind of catastrophe, you could still get in. So that's something that's different here. This just appears to be a single lane. So I did want to point that out. And I don't know how it is that the house is near Orange Middle School. I'm assuming it's a boulevard entrance, but has that been built yet?
By the Orange High School, no, they demoed the existing structures and then nothing has happened.
Yeah, that might be, I
I
mean.
didn't think that was a boulevard. Do you
Yeah.
like a divided thing with the
Yes, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
So it's like a divided boulevard, and that's something that they've required typically when there's a single lane in or out, or even if there's not. So that provides a little bit more safety for access if one would, it's almost two entrances in one, depending on how far back the situation went. So if it was blocked, you could still go in backwards or get out or whatever. So, I did want to bring up that point. And let's see here, I have a few more questions. I'm not familiar with how school buses pick up children on South Old State. If they pick them up at each, I live in a subdivision, but if they pick them up on South Old State, or there's a group, it would be very safe to have a group bus stop, obviously. Is that how they do it individually on South Old State?
I know on Orange they stop everybody's individual house.
Do they?
I've seen them do
Okay.
this house.
I've seen them do it.
Yeah, but I would assume with the subdivision, they would go into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
The cul-de-sac is designed for bus tracks to be able to make a turn, so.
So they would come in and pick up children, and then there's enough space for the bus to come around safely, and then cul-de-sac.
That's correct.
Okay. Someone brought up the issue with the buses. So is there, let me see, gosh, I'm going to notes here. So Robin, what's the minimum for FR1 now that the zoning could change?
Well, so the minimum lot size is 1 acre.
Is it 1 acre? Okay. So in theory, could this, let me see, it's like 7.5 acres, not including the existing house. So in theory, he could build possibly up to 7, assuming that there would somehow be access. Potentially up to 7 homes on this site if there was, I don't know how the county's doing flag lots and stuff now, but in theory, there could be up to 7 houses built with no input from anybody. Just to kind of keep things in perspective. Like I was telling the neighbors the other day that there's a 8-acre site behind my house, and the guy came in and chopped all the trees down and built 2 houses, and, I had no control over it, and it's been actually really, rough, but I guess he could have also built 20 condos there, so he kind of had to wait it out, but, the trees are gone, and that's been very difficult, but if it's FR1, they can do almost anything they want. They can come in and clear cut all the trees. They don't have to get it rezoned, and the residents don't have any input into that. So just to throw that one perspective in there about what could happen depending on the outcome of this hearing. So John, is there a way that you could make this plan adhere to the current zoning resolution?
To the new one, because
The current one,
the old one.
the existing, yeah.
The old one.
There is. If you remember, there's a section in the current, I'm sorry, not the current code, the old, this SFPRD code that talks about cluster lots. And the standard size for cluster lots is 60 by 120. So if we wanted to call this a cluster development, we go in and do that. We did that on the Orange Cove project, if you remember up front. We didn't think that was the right fit here. What it comes down to, from my perspective, is we've got a lot of emotional neighbors who don't, I'm hearing a lot of NIMBYism, and I apologize for being forthright here, but I'm a little bit angry because I'm feeling like I'm being slandered here quite a bit by supposedly my neighbors. But it doesn't supersede my right to develop the property into a planned district. The comp plan provides for that. It suggests that that's the right path forward. If you want to put a subdivision in there, it gives you guidance at 2 units to the acre. There's a history of granting more than 2 units to the acre with some offsets, which is what I came in with. The rear yard setback, the only reason I asked for that divergence is because your current one is 30. The reason that's 30 is because you've had so many people come into BZA asking for a divergence from the 35 feet because they want to put a pool in their backyard. Okay, so that's the reason you adopted 30 as your new standard. We'll leave it at 35 and let them come to the BZA if that's a big issue. The only divergence I can't really do anything about is the lot depth. We're encouraged in our due diligence period before we buy property to come in and talk to staff, get some guidance. I talked to staff, I talked to several of you folks too, and I was encouraged to proceed that the road with lots on both sides of the road is the right way to go, and that's what I've done, and I'm getting a lot of pushback on it. But I did follow all the procedures that we're encouraged to do as a developer here. So I'm stuck with 120 feet depth lots on one side, 122 feet on the other side. I'm trying to justify it by showing that the neighboring subdivision, the only neighboring subdivision that's right up against this one, has some lots that are smaller than that, so it's not out of character. I recognize that the FR1 lots that are around here have a different set of standards, that's the case. I agree with that, but that's not what I'm going for. I'm going for SFPRD, as is my right, and I'm following all the guidelines as best I can. If I get rid of the rear yard, divergence, and I take 2 lots out, I'll comply with the exception of the lot depth. So I ask you, where does that put us?
Right, okay, so I think the most you could build would be 16 homes, correct, for the density requirement?
We round up usually. It's 16 and some change.
So that's 16.
It'd be 16.68.
So that's 16 then, right?
I can.
Right, who rounds up?
Sure.
Who rounds up?
Everybody rounds up.
What would the density, okay, let's just take home. So what would the density be then if there were 16 homes built? That's still over the 2 acre, 2 units per acre.
It's 1.98. 1.92.
Okay,
17 is 2.04.
So you could do 16, and then if you took out the half acre lot, then you could do a little over 15.
Why would I take that out though? We're keeping the house.
Well, I know, I just think, I never really liked it when someone has come in and had a single family existing home, because I feel like it's used to justify the density I've never been a big
No, it does
fan
the
of that.
opposite. It actually does the opposite here because it's on a larger lot. The reason it's on a larger lot is we're gonna expand the house to match the new architectural style of the new homes that come in the community.
But I think it would be 15 and a half houses could be built, which I would round down on that if you took that out, correct?
You would.
Could you match, how many houses could you build if you had to keep the lot depth? If you had to match the dimensions?
11. Yeah, probably 11. But it wouldn't be economically feasible to build a road single litter. I mean, that's the reason for the development next to Orange Middle School is going in. Doesn't make sense. It's got road and lots on one side.
Was that subdivision at Orange, did that adhere to the 2 units per acre?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so, and I know we've approved a little bit in the past, has been some higher density, but what I've heard from residents over the last 2 or 3 years is we want you to adhere to the zoning resolution and we don't want these extra densities, is what I've been hearing. So there's been, thanks to increased traffic and other school issues and all that, the residents have been speaking that they would like us to keep the densities at the zoning resolution. And so when you came in, you spoke with staff, but staff don't make the decisions, the trustees do. And I understand that you came in and you thought that that is what would be approved. And at that point, were they telling you there'd be 120-foot lot depth?
Yeah, I came in with that.
Is that, okay, and then what was the lot width? 55?
I came in with 60, the original.
60, okay.
Yeah.
So I think, so when all these densities and changes were proposed at the meeting where the trustees considered the new zoning resolution, that's what it was. And I spoke up and I requested that they be increased because I knew these kind of situations would occur. So I'm happy that we were able to keep at least a few of them consistent, but that was what was proposed up until that point. So that's what you have to work with. Some of them have been reduced if you had to reapply. Some of them are lower now, unfortunately, than they were in the old code, and that's my own opinion as far as density. So could you build, what could you build right now that would comply with this, with the zoning resolution? You could build 11 homes. So I do feel honestly.
No, I think I would come in and classify it as a cluster development, and I come in with 60-foot by 120-foot.
Robin, do we have cluster development with the new code? Like at this point, if we denied this, does he have to come, he has to then come using the new code, right?
Correct.
And we have cluster.
Is there cluster development in the new code?
No.
No. So it's
You
neighborhood
could do it as a
zone
plan unit.
or it's plan
Yes,
unit. Those are the
And I've been
choices.
encouraged from the very beginning to do it under the old zoning and develop it with lots on both sides of the road. We recognize there's a restriction there. It's not far outside of what's there now. So that divergence, in my opinion, I don't see how that affects any other development. I see how it would affect FR1 lots. Any development will affect FR1 lots. The only neighborhood that's actually able to see this are 4 or 5 lots in Summerfield Village. And they have lot depths of 115 feet to 125. And their houses are they have a 6-foot side yard setback. It's 12 feet between houses.
And all the FR1 people around will also be able to see.
They surely do.
Robin, is Summerfield Village 2.18? Someone said 2.18 units per acre, is that correct?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can do some research.
Yeah, could you, I'm wondering about that because I can't remember, I've been here a long time, but I can't remember, but that was a very controversial subdivision because there was cluster housing, and that was back in the day when you couldn't have cluster housing, but there's a huge amount of green space in that development, which is really nice, and that's kind of the trend now. You kind of hide the houses behind the green space, everyone can enjoy the green space, they have smaller yards, they're easier to take care of, but then there's still a lot of green space for kids and other people to use.
And a lot of this green space is taken up by a pond, which is beautiful, but it's not a place where I can just send my
It's not active.
The pond isn't the entire open space that you see.
It seems like it's a lot. Robin, do we have a requirement for active versus passive green space in the code?
Yes.
Okay, so does this meet the requirements for that?
Yes.
And John, how much of the pond, that property will be taken away when this Southwood State is widened?
I think it's about 4/10 of an acre. But again, your code specifically says gross density. Every other
With what's
zone.
existing, yeah, right, so, some people have,
And-
that concern.
Yeah, like we have to utilize the acreage that
Existing.
is currently there.
Yeah.
That's our.
And the plans that you see show the future conditions, it shows the wire. The plan that I submitted shows the future right of way, and it shows the future edge of pavement. So it's not what's there today. What's there today is a much greater distance. Contrary to what some of the comments said, that the pond is not in the public right of way, it's nowhere close.
Well, someone said that like half the property would be taken up.
Yeah,
by the
right.
ones. I just wanted to make sure that, I wanted to clarify that. So it's you were saying it's 4/10 of an acre. Okay, and, what am I writing here? So there is no, you could not do cluster development if you were to reapply. I do feel that the ingress egress is a safety issue for the trustees because I met with a few of the neighbors the other day, and as we all know, it's very difficult to get in and out. And at a minimum, I would think it would have to have a boulevard entrance somehow.
That's typically done when a development of greater than 30 lots doesn't have access to a second spot. With that being said, I'd be happy to acquiesce to that. I agree with you, safety is paramount for anybody that lives here or even in the area.
Addressing that to your earlier question, yes, Summerfield Village is
Yeah,
2.28.
okay.
2.0 what?
2.28.
Oh, 2.28, is it 2.28? Okay.
It's 2.28.
Or not 2.18, I thought, right?
2.28.
Okay, do you guys have an idea of how you're going to decide?
I just want to make sure, can't read my writing now, unfortunately. Let's see.
And I do have 3 different options for the board to consider. One is for approval, one is for denial, and one is for approval with modifications. The language reads funny, so just because of the zoning commission recommended denial, so you would be denying.
The denial.
Yes.
If we were.
So 2 negatives make a positive.
All right, so John, I do have one question on sheet 3 where we're discussing the screening, like at the Reserve B up against the Deguy's property, basically. So this version of the drawing says, provide screening to block headlights on a neighboring house, combination of trees, mounting a privacy fence preferred. My understanding is the zoning commission version also had a statement that said like, to the coordination with the existing owner, basically coordinating with Peter or to the satisfaction of the owner on the north, but then that little sentence went away. So can you speak to that?
We can add that sentence back in.
There's been a lot of concerns about not only having sufficient landscaping, but privacy. And privacy fencing extending further in the development, I think, help with that, but not.
My only concern with privacy fencing is that we have to cut down those trees in that tree preservation zone. But we can't cut down the trees in that tree preservation zone. I don't want to not cut down any trees to put up.
Right, but why couldn't they go in the backyards?
Well, my understanding is that the backyards go to the property line, and the first 15 to 20 feet of that property line is trees.
Right.
So then you're gonna have to put, so it's trees, existing trees, and then your backyard is 20 foot shallower, right? So then you're at 100 foot lot of grass with your house. And I know we had talked about, do you put in mounding, when I met with the neighbors, it was you put in swale and mounding to make sure you keep the water on your property versus onto the property to the north and or the south, but then same thing, to put mounding in, you're gonna get rid of those trees, the existing trees, so.
Well, if you look on sheet 2, especially on the north side, the storm sewers are quite a bit south of the property line, so that we can come off the tree line and then do the grading.
So
there'd be
if
room.
this is Peter's property, the property's gonna go like this, and then there'll be a swale, like a ditch along the back of the house.
It'll remain as it's graded now, flat where the trees are, then it'll come down. with a grade and then back up to the house.
So basically a ditch just south of the tree preservation lines, or north if you're coming from the south side.
That's correct.
Okay, do we want like a 5-minute recess, or are we good?
Well, yeah, I'm inclined to not approve this application because it does not adhere to the land use plan or the zoning code. So I'll give you an opportunity to adjust your plan requirements to the current zoning code.
You mean without any divergences?
Yeah.
So you're not, I mean, you've approved divergences in the past.
There was one in there that was maybe okay. I can't remember what it was. It's the rear yard setback that, you know, I mean, had the code been approved as it was presented a few months ago, it would be 120 feet, but thank goodness it was reverted back to 135. There was one divergence I was okay with, and I can't think of what it was, but the rest of them, the rear yard setbacks. No, I just think you're trying to cram too many houses and onto this property, honestly.
But I volunteered to drop 2 more, to leave it right at 2 units to the acre, which is not cramming, it's per code now, it's per.
But we still don't have the depth of lot that's required.
And again, it's the same depth as the adjacent lots.
But you knew the depth of the property, the width of the property would be
We
fine.
exceed the open space requirement, looking back, if I dropped the lots.
So is the concern with the board the density and or the lot depth? I guess.
The lot depth contributes to the density.
Yeah.
Okay. So if the applicant came in at 2 units an acre or less and a lot depth of 135.
And the measurements matched, yeah.
And I think you're saying that's not possible.
Based on the configuration of the land, it's not possible.
Okay, so I think we know the decision. If the revisions are not possible,
then we just
So, because he's requesting diversity for intensity of use and lot depth, and then he could get rid of the rear yard setback, he said. Are those the only?
And I'll drop the intensity of use. But there's nothing I can do about those lot depths.
And what are the
And
other?
I did have private meetings with members of this commission and also encouraged.
And we have 35,000 bucks.
You had meetings with who? This board? Yeah, right, but that was after you'd already applied and went through zoning.
I mean, the board is permitted to have individual conversations, but I think just hearing from the community tonight has put a lot of concerns into place, and I think the board has to balance working with the applicant as we try to be good partners, and then also hearing from everybody else. So it's a tough decision.
When did you purchase the property?
I think it was September, and no, I don't live on the property, let's go mention. I purchased the property based on the guidance I was given when I saw feedback. And it wasn't just from Orange Township, it was regional planning as well. So, we can only do what we can do based on what's available.
Well, I think when you were talking about, I don't know if you had mentioned that in these conversations that the rear yard setback, that the lot depth would actually be a lot less than was required. Like the density didn't seem too far out of line, like keep it maybe a little bit higher, but at that point, did you know the configuration?
Yeah, the plan hasn't changed. The lots since the very beginning have been 122 feet deep because that's the ultimate depth we have. That didn't raise a concern until today, it seems like.
Well, once the plan comes out, you can actually visualize it, and there's so many divergences.
There's only one divergence, lot depth.
Yeah, I think if you could comply with the zoning standards that are in place now, it could be approved, but I can't see approving it like as is. I mean, you might have to come back and buy all the neighbors' properties and make it into a subdivision,
And it was interesting that because I mean, in all honesty, Mr. and Mrs. Ross had reached out to me because my husband and I had like far-fetched dreams of owning a farm residential lot for $4, so we obviously can't afford this, pipe dream. But, Mr. Washer's house was for sale at the same time.
That wouldn't help, that's just up front. I mean, that wouldn't help the bulk of this property.
It could have, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a developer, I don't know.
Believe me, I've got a layout that includes that piece, we looked at it, but all of our lots are in the back, primarily behind that piece. So am I hearing that there's an option of approval subject to meeting all the requirements of the SFPRD zoning code?
Well, we'd have to see the plan though.
But it sounds like you would be able to, except for the lot depth. Is that correct?
Other than, I don't know, I'd have to look at it. I have to talk to a land planner and see what options I can have. Maybe I can turn some of the lots sideways or something like that. It'll be goofy. I'm just not sure how this divergence has a negative impact on literally anybody, because it's not inconsistent with the neighboring subdivision.
But it is inconsistent with the farm residential development that it's right in the middle of.
All SFPRDs are inconsistent with that.
Yep.
That's not the point. The comprehensive land use plan suggests that these should be developed under the SFPRD, or now the neighborhood zone, or still the PRD. So, I've been doing this for a long time. I've had conversations with a lot of people. This feels like, this feels like it's kind of backhanded that all of a sudden the lot depth is the issue, because that's been the first thing I brought up when I came in and talked to people. And I've not been given any indication that that was a hardship. It was always the density, it was always the lot width, it was the side yard lot lines, never was the lot depth mentioned as even the hardship for the trustees.
Yeah, I don't think, did I meet with you before you submitted this? I don't, on this property, because I don't.
Specifically on this property, we had Zoom call.
Yeah, but that was that was in January. When did you submit this application?
It was before I submitted it. It was in January or early February.
Of this year?
Yes, and it included the exact same lot depth.
When was this submitted originally?
It was originally submitted in October.
Yeah.
The original submittal was in October. I asked to meet with you before I submitted to the PZC the second time, which would happen in February. So we either talked in early February or late January, and I shared the drawing with you when we went through each of these divergences, and the lot depth didn't come up.
Right, but you were making it sound as though before you purchased the property that you came in and met with trustees and they were okay with it. And I didn't meet with you.
No, not before I purchased the property.
Okay, because then that would be the time that you would think, I mean, by that time, you think the zoning commission already considered it, right? And by the time that I discussed things with you.
At that time.
You're already in, you already bought it. I mean,
Right, but at that time I was looking at the new zoning code, seeing the standards had been relaxed, so I was kind of caught in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And obviously didn't adopt those.
Yeah, but it's not like, I don't think you met with, or not, at least me, I said, oh, this looks great, you can probably buy it, it's fine, because you'd already purchased it, so I don't know if that would have changed, because, developers, anyone can meet with at least just one trustee on their own, who bounce things off, and sometimes we'll say, no, under no circumstance would I ever approve whatever it is, like a gas station, in the middle residential area, or whatever, or strip center. But, there's other things you can get people's input, and I've done that with a lot of developers, but this was after it was already submitted. And then we also didn't have as many residents that seemed as concerned at that point, so now we hear a lot of residents are very concerned. That is a big part of it.
So the project on Orange Road that you approved, you also approved a divergence for lot on that project.
Which one?
The one on Orange Road that you spoke about, like
Yeah.
that. So you'd be basically.
What was that?
Your house.
Yeah, across the street. So.
And we look at and I get that, and we look at every application.
Right, you approved the exact divergence for that development that you won't approve for this development.
Which divergence was that again?
Lot depth. That's the only one I'm seeking.
And what's the lot depth? What is the lot depth there?
I don't know.
Robin, do you remember?
I believe it's 120.
120. Yeah, and that was what, was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, and that one had, like you said, it's cluster houses up front, but it's larger lots in back.
No, I'm not talking about my property.
Oh, not yours?
No, I'm talking about another property just to the west.
By the
of
way,
Orange-
by the back,
Middle.
the track.
Yeah, so
I did develop that.
it's not developed.
But how,
Azar Village, it's Azar Village.
how many years ago was that? Like 2 or 3?
Oh, gosh.
It was in 2022.
Were you here then? Okay, so that's been a while, and back then, I think the last 2 or 3 years, the last 2 residents have been very upset all through Delaware County about density. As soon as you're gonna build a high density, so I think a lot of us are listening to the residents, and we've, become a little bit less laissez-faire on the density. I think we've asked our zoning commission to crack down on and feel okay to uphold the zoning code, because of resident feedback. I've never had a single resident approach me and say, hey, I'd like to see higher density. Not one. You know, never. And we serve the existing residents that live here. John, I know you're a resident and, you know, you're a developer and want you to be successful, and we all do, but this, it's just too many houses crammed in one small area.
Right, but I've just acquiesced to the number of houses, so the density is no longer being requested. It's literally the one physical constraint that you just approved for something in 2022.
Well, that was 4 years ago.
Why did the circumstances change?
Well, because
Because we're listening to our residents,
Yeah,
we're listening to our bosses.
And back then, I don't know how many residents came, I had a few that didn't want it, but it was 10 houses, and it was in a very busy area already, and there weren't as many traffic concerns getting in and out.
Well, and I think the benefit of these planned districts at the time, which we still allow in the new code, it is a case by case situation. You can really factor in the surrounding area, what the residents are saying, the traffic. I mean, there's all sorts of. Every site is different.
Well, and then sometimes residents come in and they're just like, well, we don't want anything to go here ever. And that's not a valid reason to deny a request. If you say, well, I want this to stay ever on for the rest of my life, just like me and the beautiful property behind me, which I wish I could have purchased, that's not a valid reason. I just don't want to see anything here, because something might get built here. But we do have the ability to consider resident feedback within the confines of the zoning code and the land use plan and say no if we think it's not a good fit. If it met everything, you know, it would be different. But
Which is why we had, I feel if I remember correctly, why we had to approve the development where your house is, where you live on Orange. Because that one met, except for, even the cluster housing.
Yes, that was the case.
It was under the density.
There was. Let me ask
Yeah, and
you
the residents were upset too, but we pretty much needed to approve that because it met the requirements. So just.
Allow more green space as well.
Yeah.
Let me pose this question to you, Bob. So if this gets denied and I come in under the new code, you have 2 zoning categories. One's the neighborhood zone and one is the PRD. The PRD will permit 120-foot deep lots at a density of 2.0 units to the acre. It would be the exact same plan. It would be, as Robin, but it would be the identical plan if I drop 2 lots. But you'll just force me to go through another 6 months of going through this process. Is that true, Robin?
Is it 120?
It's per plan.
Yeah, so the PUD does not have dimensional standards, it has the overall density requirements.
So I voted no on that new zoning code.
Well, I think there's no dimensional standards because it's up to the board to decide that.
Right, but there's no.
We could still say no.
Yeah, your guidance is the neighborhood zone, and so you still have the ability to. I mean, John's not the way the new PRDs work is there isn't a divergence. You're just applying as it is, and you hope for the best at the board level. But you have every right to make the same decisions that you have today.
So if I came back through, that's what I would propose. I guess I'm asking for your consideration based on the size and shape of the lot, that either grant a variance in this case, or would you approve it down the road as a PRD under 2 lots per acre?
Where I am after listening to the residents and the fact that it's in the middle of, I'm looking at the edges, right? So 75% of the north and south quarters is farm residential.
100% of that was farm residential when Summerfield went in.
I get that.
That was 20 years
I'm a firm believer that if you see property for sale that's up against you and it's currently farm residential and it's lovely, go buy it. And if you can't, I'm sorry, because I obviously also can't buy it, right?
That was my argument when people say they don't want it in their backyard. This is per the the subdivision standards.
But when Peter said that, and it just kind of reminded us, and what I heard tonight from people on the north and the south of this, is that it is in the middle of this farm residential lot.
Every other development was in the middle of a farm residential. That argument is every parcel was farm residential.
Yeah, does somebody want to make that?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 26-122 to adopt the recommendation of denial of zoning commission as to zoning application ZON-25-07 for real property design and development for Oak Knoll single family planned residential district.
Second.
Trustee Ringgold?
Yes.
Trustee Knapp?
Yes.
Trustee Faust?
Yes.
Motion carries.
There is no other business before the meeting today. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.